Chippendales, to me, growing up, it was in the zeitgeist. It was in the cultural zeitgeist. I loved daytime talk shows growing up. So when I was home from school, I was watching Jenny Jones, Montel Williams. I remember the Chippendales being on the shows and sort of the conversations that came from that. It wasn't until my callbacks that I learned the real story. And I was like, this is absolutely crazy and no one's going to believe it.
Hey, Quentin, how you doing?
Hey, Daniel, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing so well, man. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the movie podcast today. You are so great in the series, and I can't wait for everyone to be able to watch it. I'm just curious for yourself, when did the role of Otis first come on your radar?
Yeah, it was last year around, I think early October is when the the audition process started. And yeah, sent in a tape, a couple of weeks went by, heard back, met with the showrunners and producers and director at the time, and went through that, and then it went a little bit more and found out I got it, and it was just great. I was really excited about it. I was doing something else at the time, and I remember I was like mentally preparing for this while I was doing the other thing. I was like, I was just ready to go. So yeah.
That's awesome. And you talk about mentally preparing. I'm curious, how about on the physical side? There's a lot of great like dance sequences in the series. What was your preparation? What was your training like? And how much Magic Mike did you watch to get ready for this?
So I had seen the first Magic Mike. I don't think I've watched since then. I do love Channing Tatum though. No, it was a lot of training, and it was something, it was actually interesting. So when I had first gotten the role, I thought I was coming in to be one of the bodybuilders from Venice Beach iteration of Chippendales, which was the first iteration.
Got you.
And so I had a good amount of time. I think I found out about November that I was going to get this. We were starting in like February, and I started working out. I got the biggest I had ever been. And so then the choreographer, reaches out to me and sends me the tape. And then I send a tape back, and they're like, oh no, like you're way too big. That's not what we need at all. So I actually had to like lose 20 pounds in order.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to lose 20 pounds in order to filming, like stop working out, change my eating habits a little bit, start running more, and then came to Los Angeles and started dancing with this great dance instructor, with the choreographers. And I was just, I was there, 5 days a week for hours and hours a day, really just learning a completely new medium, a completely new language with these dance, and getting it in my body. And I had to really go through like a crash course of all these dancing styles, and then had to learn the choreography.
Right.
So yeah, it was probably, it was the role that I've prepared the most physically by any means. And it was fun. There were some rough days, days I actually got put to the brink of tears. Well, not brink, I actually full out cried because I don't like being bad at things.
Right. Yeah.
I was very bad at dancing. But yeah, Bill, he got my dance instructor got me right. And I think it came out well. I felt really prepared on the days when we were actually filming.
No, it looks amazing. And like, to your testament, like you would have never have known you were ever feeling that, like obviously a testament to your acting, but also to your performing in the show, because your sequences are fantastic. And it's no surprise that, Otis is the most popular performer at Chippendales, because like you nail it. You just deliver.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny. They all used to talk about like on the actual dance days were my best. They're like, you weren't this good in rehearsals. You weren't practicing, but when the lights turn on, I think I got the energy from the crowd. Our background was really incredible. Like our first day that we were shooting, I was so nervous. Like I was really nervous to do this. And then they actually threw that I was going to be stripping in the actual dance. Like at first it was like dance, cut to close her off. Like the director, who was just really great, he was like, nah, let's just strip while you're doing it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I haven't practiced. We're gonna make it work. So but yeah, it was really it was really enjoyable, really great.
That's amazing. I'm curious for yourself too, as great of a performer Otis is, he keeps telling Steve and Nick how much more he could bring, how much more he wants to do. What do you think was driving him to not so much leave the performance side, but wanting to do just more, get more out of his life at Chippendales?
I think he was just an ambitious individual, and also like many sports, I'm an athlete, or at least I was. I'm an athlete, and there's a shelf life on, when you're doing stuff that's body intensive, there's a shelf life on how long you can do it. And just for my very brief time dancing, like, it hurts, your joints hurt. So if that's what you have done for all these years, he's 34, and you can't do that forever. You have to transition to something.
Right.
I think that was what was driving it. Being able to continue to make money and make even more money, and just ambitions in general. I don't think he was a human being that was satisfied by just the 15 seconds of fame. He wanted more than that.
Right. I know. I totally see that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious also for yourself, Chippendales is such an interesting, just the show itself. It's so fun to watch. And it's one of those things that you think like, man, like, is this all true? Like, what, like, did this really happen? Or it's like, it's crazy to think like just how everything came together. When you were researching everything, what was the biggest surprise that you came across? Or like, oh, wow, like this is how something happened. This is what happened.
I think that's it. I mean, I think that was the biggest surprise, just the fact that this happened. And I had no knowledge of it beforehand. I had been aware of Chippendales as a brand and the SNL skit and everything like that. But just the fact that something like this could be what's behind one of these giant, I'm losing my words a little, but giant things that everybody knows about.
Right.
That this was kind of the true story behind it.
Yeah.
That was just surprising alone. That, like, there was all this, like, I knew obviously, okay, yeah, there's the sex aspect, the cultural phenomenon that it was at the time, this, new glitz glam thing, but the murder that went involved, just the fact that they had the person, Steve Banerjee, was the creator of it. I would have never, you know what I mean? And yeah, so I just think literally the entire story was the most surprising part, the fact that it existed and I had no knowledge of it.
Yeah, it's so crazy that it had to be true, right?
Yeah, exactly. The tagline right there.
Quentin, thank you so much for your time, man. I cannot wait for everyone to check you out on the show and get to see what you work on next. You are so great in it. So thank you again, man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Daniel.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Robin, how are you?
Hey, Daniel, what up? I'm well, thank you.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you. I've been burning through this show, and you are so great in it. So thank you for that. And the show is so great. So I just want to say that right off the top. So thank you for your time.
Of course.
I'm just curious, to get things going, how familiar were you with the Chippendales worlds before joining the project?
Honestly, Chippendales, to me, growing up, it was in the zeitgeist. It was in the cultural zeitgeist. I loved daytime talk shows growing up. So when I was home from school, I was watching Jenny Jones, Montel Williams. There's another one I'm thinking of. I can't remember right now. But I remember the Chippendales being on the shows and sort of the conversations that came from that. But I also, Chippendales, to me, it was me discovering my sexuality as a young queer boy, realizing that he was attracted to men. And so when these guys would show up, we were like, ooh, I feel things. You know what I'm saying? So that's my memory of the Chippendales. That's how they affected me. Once I got the audition for the show, I didn't know the plot. I didn't know the things that happened behind the scenes. And even I knew a little bit of it, but I was more focused on Ray himself, the character. It wasn't until my callbacks that I learned the real story. And I was like, this is absolutely crazy and no one's going to believe it. And, our version of the story is our version. It is fictionalized. So it was cool to sort of like have that there, but also we're going to explore these other rooms within the story, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And, I was talking with Quentin earlier, and, it's one of those stories that it's so crazy that it has to be true, but also, you take liberties to tell a great story in the show. And I think that's what you guys have done with this, right?
Word. Thank you.
For yourself, when you were doing your research, when you were, when you got that final call back, you got the role, what was the biggest surprise for you that you learned, like, about this world, about your character, who Ray was?
Touched on this a couple of times, but the thing that really surprised me, because I didn't find this until we were on set. I couldn't figure out why Ray and Steve became friends. And there is, when Steve and I first meet, he's coming from a trip where something bad happened. And he communicates to me what happens. And I remember feeling this sense of like, oh man, like that's like feeling for him.
Right.
And when that happened, it gave us permission to sort of be soft with each other. And I think that as men, we present in a certain way outside as men seeking power too,
Right.
As brown men, as immigrant men in predominantly these white spaces, you know, there's just like, you know, toxic masculinity is abundant, right, for us.
Oh, for sure.
And I love this idea of these men finding this softness in the same way that when you look at The Godfather, you see all the violence, but you're also seeing these grown men kiss each other and be passionate and express love and anger and all the levels of that coexisting. And I realized the more and more I meditated on that, I wanted Kumail and I to really show that more, because I think it's not expected.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're like, yeah, who would want to be friends with Steve? And I think you're saying, again, I love Kumail. But it's just funny, like his performance in this. It's like, man, like he's not a likable guy. You get where he's coming from in some regards, but you're also just like, it's interesting when people, you know, will go into business with him or choose to be on his side. But you know, there's a scene in the show where, you know, when you are, you know, you're telling Steve like you are committing yourself, like your loyalty to him. And I'm just curious, what do you think was going on through like in Ray's head in that scene? When again, I don't want to reveal anything what's going on in the scene, but what do you think is going through in his mind in that moment?
Well, ultimately, Ray's a survivor, right? He's gonna hustle his way out of a situation the way he has his entire life. In that specific moment, I think there are ratios of Ray that knew he was messing up. Mm-hmm. And there are ratios of Ray where he thought, no, this is not a big deal. Like whatever this is, no one's gonna be offended by it. And right. When Steve is offended by it and he realizes, oh crap, I think there is a part of me that knew that I was messing up, but it was convenient and I got to make this right, because here is this man who in some ways has a lot in common with me as brown men, right? But also I look up to him because he's a brown man who owns a business in a period where you didn't often see that.
Right.
And for me, I had to make things right so that I could stay in his good graces and climb that social ladder with him.
Right.
Steve is an opportunity for me. Steve is a way out. Steve is survival.
Right.
So I think, you know, dude was just trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this there are very serious themes obviously within this show. Kumail's a very funny guy. What was it like working with him and, you know, figuring out who these characters were together?
Kumail was great. Like, you know, you always worry about what people are going to be like when you actually get to work with him. If he was so chill and so fun to be around, we laughed a lot. And I think that because the scenes, there are certain things that are really, really intense. There's a lot of emotions. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to sort of rev up in a different way, rev up with laughter and silliness and you know, staying energized in that way so that then when you come on, you can just unleash all that energy that you've been building up before the scene. But also like if for me, like if I had a particularly emotional scene, I also knew like Kumail reads the cues for me. Yeah. He gives me my moment. I go to my corner, I do my thing, and I come back and he obviously gets it. But the thing that was crazy about working with Kumail was that my first day I had to improv with him. And that was triggersome. You know, here you are improvising your first day, a character that you're just starting to figure out. It was supposed to be kind of an inconsequential scene, and you're doing it with this guy who this is what he does for a living, right? You know, as a stand-up, he's improvising all the time, and if anything, he just took care of me and made sure, you know, we did our thing.
I love that. Again, Robin, thank you so much for your time. You know, I think, you know, people are going to really enjoy the show when it comes out. I can't wait for them to see you in it. And I wish you all the best, and hopefully we get to talk again soon down the road.
Thank you, Daniel. All the best to you.
Thank you.